Okay.
Hello and welcome. I'm Mat Bradley-Tschirgi, host of Sequelcast 2, and we're doing a live podcast here on the video game movies of Uwe Boll, everyone's most loved movie director. With me I have Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Christopher Franson. I'm an absolute nobody. I'm not a host of anything or anything, so.
My name is Tony Minson, and I have written things on the internet before, so I guess I'm qualified.
And we're going to start things off. I worked for a few months to track down Uwe Boll, and he agreed to do a pre-recorded interview, so we're going to play that on here, and then afterwards we're going to kind of talk through his gazillion video game movies and take some questions from the audience. So let's get started.
Oh no!
Wait, can we turn the lights off?
Hang on.
That's a good question.
Can we turn the lights off?
Or dim them?
Or dim them?
Oh no, none of this that they let me know.
We got some little gremlins going on. So while that's happening, I have some prizes I want to give away.
For just being here.
So yeah, just for being here. So we're going to start things off with a prize that has nothing to do with Uwe Boll, but I got it sent to me by his producer. It's a movie called Polycarp. 7 murders, 7 suspects, 7 churches of Revelation. If somebody wants this, just hold up your hand and I'll throw it to you. Okay.
I think they're in the middle.
All right, how about in the middle? You want to catch this? Yeah. Okay. Hey, very good. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, it depends. They were actually in the lobby of the movie theater, but in the little towns at that point, when you have to think like 90, 75, 78, you had flippers, like playing flipper with like pinball, right? So, and then later, I think in the 80s, it started with this kind of shooter games where you just sit there in a booth, you have some guns, and you shoot targets and stuff like this. So the very early days, basically. And I remember in Leverkusen, the next bigger city, I think it was also in the 80s, that a real arcade opened. And it was a big sensation because nobody ever saw this stuff before. In the video game, you have a lot of times basically not a real story at all. You have some characters, you have some visuals where you think, okay, that is how the look of the movie should be. I mean, if you have an Alone in the Dark game, you need to get a little darker, that H.P. Lovecraft kind of feeling into it. If you have a House of the Dead, it's a different kind of visual style also for to make a movie. The strange thing is, I mean, what I learned with the bad reviews is that a lot of gamers have developed their own ideas of what the perfect story of a game should be. But it's not public domain or something, you don't know it if you actually make a movie. And then they're very mad about adding things in, changing some stuff. I mean, look at Dungeon Siege. The Bible of the game, what Gas Power Games gave to me, was like 500 pages. And then with story, like I mean, and I said, but I don't see it. If you don't have that 500 pages and you just play that game, it's just not there. In a different way, right? So I mean, House of the Dead, the script was from Mark Altman, like Mindfire Entertainment, and it was already approved by Sega. And when they approached me, they were like the rights and everything. And after the movie was financially successful, I looked out to get other games. And games, they are more interesting in a way, where you have better character, better story. And so for example, I had Fear Effect from IDOS, but then in the end we couldn't make the movie. IDOS offered me Hitman at that point, but then they never closed the deal with me and sold it first to Vin Diesel and then later to that French company. So I was very active trying to get rights, basically. And Alone in the Dark was, a very strong, more cult game, basically. And so I negotiated with Infogrames at that point because they bought Atari the rights. And there was a thing what was in the end a fuck up, basically, because they developed at that point a new Alone in the Dark game, a new Nightmare, and I tried to be a little closer to that storyline, what they gave to me. And then the game fell apart, never got produced. They closed the Atari development for Atari thing in LA. And so I was stranded with the script basically based on something what never got done, what never got turned into action. And I think that was also what made fans mad about the movie, because it was not really based on one of the other games who came out before. So we had only Edward Canby basically, and I tried to keep the mood but that was the problem basically. So on Blood Rain it was then different. But of course, what I tried is to do with every video game based movie. I tried to do different genres, different kind of setups, like a classical vampire thing with Blood Rain, very gory and sexy. More like Dungeon Siege is a little more like this kind of Robin Hood kind of thing. Because I would be bored to do what they did with Resident Evil, for example, where you basically do the same movie after the other. That would bore me, and I think basically, I got on the radar of the people recognizing I make so many video game-based movies that they started to hate me for it. So that is the thing. But I try to switch it up and do different, as I said, different genres. I was not interested to make movies out of the same genre the whole time, you know. Yeah, and I think also, like, for example, when Blood Rain got bad reviews overall, nobody recognized at that point. Now in 10 years later, whatever, people recognizing that I did a few things there. They are very unusual for Hollywood films. It's super violent. It shows breast and tits and whatever. So I didn't hold back. And I think a lot of that studio movies, they just act like, remember Van Helsing and all that stuff. They're acting like they're so gruesome, but then you actually never see anything. You don't see a head chopped up in a close-up or something, because they all want that PG-13 rating. And I really, I think with Blood Rain, I really went for it, and I really gave a shit about the rating. So, and I didn't get credit for it, but I think when I talk now years later to people, they actually say they laughed at that it was so gory. And that Kristanna Loken got naked and stuff like this. Yeah, so it was first I found a little puppy, and it was like this size in the basically garbage. So Fritz was the name. So I took the dog home, and it was really very hard on me, because the problem for me was I had to work a lot and very hard, and that puppy needed like really full-on attention. And so I found an older woman who took care of it. I gave her some money, and Fritz, as the last I know, is still alive, 15 years old. So, and then I got another homeless dog, Daisy, and she died this summer, also 14 and a half years old. So when I took that dog with my dog I had from Germany with me, Laura, they turned to be like together with me the whole time. And and then I made Dan Clark, the line producer, adopting a dog, Sturby, and Tristana Loken adopted a dog in the end. I mean, there were so many homeless dogs, it was crazy. And I had always like big food bags with me to feed the street dogs, basically. I mean, they really need to get that under control then. I mean, you have every week another crazy turn in politics. But on the other hand, I'm not biased, so I'm not a Democrat. I'm also not a Republican. I'm just an outside observer, and I have, let's say, when you see about German politics, whatever, I have very conservative stance on some issues, and I'm super liberal on other issues. For example, take the refugees in Germany. Germany took 1.5 million refugees in. The US took 10,000 in. And and of course you have a huge right corner movement in Germany against the refugees. And so on this thing, I stand totally with Merkel, because you cannot have people drawn or die and just let them die, what the right corner people want, right? So they just would then let them drawn in on the ocean trying from Africa to come over. And I have to stand that is murder, you cannot do this. So I think that the German move was the right one. But I'm very conservative in regards of when these people getting criminal action, I actually would deport them without a court case right away. You know, so that is the thing where I'm very, very conservative on this side, and that is, I think, the overall stance you have to have on politics. I think Trump is a crazy person. He's a tax fraud. He's everything, right? So, but on the other hand, if he's doing things, for example, with China, with the tariffs, then everybody flips out on him. But he's not so off with this, because since 15 years, the Chinese growing and growing and growing, because they produce cheap for Europe and North America, and at the same time they steal all the patents and copy cars and copy computers and whatever. They steal the American and European technologies and making cheap ripoffs of it, and then they get it everywhere out. So when Trump said we tax stuff higher, it's a message to China, and I'm not totally against it, you know. But of course, when it comes to Trump politics about shrinking the national parks in US, allowing fracking everywhere, and that he gives a shit about the Paris climate deal, that is ridiculous. I mean, that is the thing where I hate Trump for, and I think he's doing damage to the future generations in that 4 years term in regards of polluting the world, right? So, and I think it's absolutely, I mean, how can you still count on coal energy? It's just bullshit, and it's over, you know? So, and that is the thing, and he wants to keep 5,000 jobs in the coal energy, and at the same time destroys the possibility that 500,000 people getting jobs in new energy, like water, wind, solar energy technologies, you know. Like Germany is 70% on renewable energy already, 70%. The US is like 15% on new energy. And that is the thing, there is no way around it. It's like, that is the future. We all know that. We all know in 30 years, electro cars are everything. They will have in 30 years 90% of the cars will be electro. So there are things we cannot just stop the progress. Also in regards of future generations, you know. And Trump totally ignores it and is a backwards bullshit idiot on this with the wrong advisors. My message is rewatch some movies. Watch Postal again. You will see that Postal, I think, was a visionary film. Never done before, never done after, and I think it nails the crazy climate we're living in now. It's my favorite video game-based movie I did. And rewatch maybe some other movies like Blood Rain, In the Name of the King, and you will see that very, very bad view on it doesn't hold up over time. Like, exclude my person out of it and watch movies like Rampage, South on Wall Street. They are good movies. I did more to the end of my career, and it's too bad that I cannot come back with Postal 2 or something. The financing is just not there for the movies, and I'm very sad about it. You know, I want to make movies, but the days are over where I can refinance movies, and I think that Netflix or Amazon, whatever, don't give me a shot, is based on they Google me and see all the bad review, and that is, I'm not happy about it.
All right, thank you, Uwe, for that.
Can we just talk about tariffs?
Yeah, let's talk about economic tariffs.
Yeah.
We tricked you.
Ha! You got catfish.
But before we talk about economic tariffs, another prize to give away. I have, it's an extra large size t-shirt. It says Uwe Boll Raw, has a picture of Uwe Boll smoking a cigar on it. And on the back it says A Bull's Life, spelled like his last name. So extra large size shirt, who wants this?
I'll take it.
Okay, I'll throw over that way. Let's see if I can hit someone.
Not the camera.
No.
Oh, okay. To make up for that, for the last prize, someone from over there walk up here, I'll give you something. Just walk up here. This is a copy of Blood Rain 2 Deliverance, that's the Wild West one. It's signed by Uwe Boll. He tried to sign in pencil on the side, that didn't work, so instead he signed on her belly. And it also comes with a free comic book and copy of Blood Rain on PC. That probably won't work in your computer. There you go. Prizes are nice, okay. So back to the economic climate change. No,
Is there a labor crisis in America? Okay, I'm done.
Okay, yeah. So Uwe Boll has done more video game movies than anyone. He has directed, I think, like 11 or something by this count on this list. And that's including things, anything from House of the Dead to like spoofs like Blubberella and In the Name of the King and all that stuff. So, Tony, when was the first time you saw an Uwe Boll movie?
I remember seeing the first Blood Rain when I was in probably high school, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, I was in high school, so I thought it was amazing because it was just vampires and killing. But yeah, I quickly changed my mind.
And that one has Meatloaf in it as a vampire. It has Billy Zane in it.
Mm-hmm. It was a A-list cast, so
Yeah.
you know.
What about you, Sean?
It was Sunday night, about like 1 in the morning. It was House of the Dead for this panel. Not so good, that one. I did want to talk more in this panel about like his sort of trademarks, why these movies don't work, and not just be like, this guy, am I right? So I did try to dive into, did watch 3 for this panel. But yeah, Sunday night, I followed him, through the reviews, through the boxing and that sort of thing. So he's obviously a towering figure in this, and it's just kind of a weird thing he had going for a while that's now over, and I don't think can really happen again.
Right, because there's financing things, and also the video games for a time, they were really trying to make a lot of them into movies, and for the most part, it really hasn't been done very well. I think the first Silent Hill movie is good. I kind of like the Mario Brothers movie, but that has little reasons to do with Mario Brothers.
For its own reasons, it's
Yeah, so it's like a Ghostbusters knockoff. It's fine,
Yeah.
but like, and Uwe Boll, I like things like In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale. Which, has anyone seen that one? Raise your hand. A few people. So no, okay. Someone went eh. And so it has Jason Statham as John Rhys Davies. It has Ray Liotta from all the gangster movies as an evil wizard. You have a sword fight.
obviously.
Yeah, you have a sword fight where 2 wizards fight each other by summoning swords, and the swords fight each other. But nobody is controlling. They're controlling the swords with their mind.
Their hands are behind their back.
Yeah, their hands are behind the back the entire scene. Very dramatic music. In fact, there's a director's cut of In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale. I love saying that entire name every time. There's a director's cut that I think is like 45 minutes longer than the theatrical version, if you want to see even more scenes. But the first Uwe Boll I saw was House of the Dead with the zombies, and It doesn't have much to do with the game. The house looks more like a shack on an island where there's a rave, sponsored by Sega apparently, because there's Sega banners everywhere. And it is, I love how it uses footage from House of the Dead 2, I think, for no apparent reason. In the middle of fight scenes, it shows the zombies getting shot with the green blood oozing out as scene transitions. And they don't look like the zombies in the movie.
Yeah, it's because he's a visionary. We just don't understand it.
Well, I mean, in fairness to Uwe Boll, I kind of like his approach of like, hey, it doesn't have to be one-to-one. Like, if he was directing Resident Evil, it would be weird if Jill Valentine showed up if he was directing Resident Evil. Like, as a jumping-off point, maybe there's something there, and they don't, we don't have to see the scene where Lara Croft buys her twin pistols, because that's something everybody wondered about, right? Right? Yeah. Just me then.
I mean, if he did Metal Gear, it might just be a ninja dancing in a corner for 90 minutes. Who knows?
You wouldn't want to see that?
That might be amusing. But the point is, Uwe Boll, he does his own thing, no matter what that is, and he keeps on going for it. I think with the Blood Rain movies, he never followed the video game stuff really, but in the first one's like a prequel, the second one's in the Wild West, and the third one's in Nazi Germany. And I believe, Tony, you said you liked the last line of that movie?
Yeah, so the end of the movie just kind of ends, they're going to kill Hitler. And so they bust out of this truck, and she just goes, "Guten Tag, motherfuckers." And then it freeze frames and cuts to black, and that's how it ends.
Yeah, because you think it's building up, you think there's going to be a big
I was like,
assault.
oh, cool, an action scene.
Yeah, they're going to take out Hitler, they're going to take out all the Nazi vampires, and nope, she just steps out of a truck, fade to black.
And that was one of the better scenes.
He mentioned in that interview we were watching there, he mentioned Postal. Anyone seen Postal?
Yeah.
So that one, people that tend to like that one the most. It's a very controversial, wacky, strange movie, but so was the computer game. I mean, that was a game banned in several countries. And I mean, what other movie can you talk about where Vern Troyer gets sodomized by monkeys in a cage? And no one's going to join in on that. I'm not making this up, by the way. If you want
No,
to
these are real things.
Osama bin Laden is a character played by the same actor that played the soup Nazi in Seinfeld.
Did you want to talk about Dave Foley?
It's a real interesting.
Yeah. Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall of Fame plays Uncle Dave, who leads this religious cult called, I think, like the denomination of organic monotheism. It spells out doom. And it has apocalyptic things, and there's you get to see Dave Foley just hang out there in the wind.
Just dangling.
Just dangling. Speaking of just dangling, we've been talking about Uwe Boll some here, and one of the movies I think that's a bit more normal is Far Cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard some yeahs from the audience. Why did you say yeah over there?
Because I've seen it.
Because you've seen it. So why do you think makes it more normal, so to speak?
Well, I think it is pretty much a standard action movie, and those are pretty easy to pull off from a directorial standpoint as long as you can like choreograph all the action well. Those are fancy moves.
Yeah. So he said it's a standard action movie, and
It's hard to mess up. You're just making things blow up.
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah. I mean, the bit of trivia about Far Cry I think is bizarre. Is the late Anthony Bourdain is in there, the non-speaking part, as a scientist that gets shot.
It's that was the third one I watched. I had to freeze frame it to see him because he just like gets shot and dies. If anybody here hasn't seen a Uwe Boll movie and you want to, like that's the. I think
Has
that's the
anyone
one.
here not seen a Uwe Boll movie?
Anybody?
Okay.
Oh,
This is-
wow.
Okay, so great.
And in fact, there's a lot of, as of this recording, there's a lot of them streaming on Amazon Prime if you have that service. That's the perfect way to check it out.
There's also a documentary about him, which is
Yeah, a documentary.
as interesting as this movie.
A documentary called Raging Bull about, because Uwe Boll, around the time of Postal, I think, did a thing where he said, internet film critics, if you don't like my movies, send me your bad reviews. And he picked out 5 that he thought were especially heinous. And he said, okay, I'm going to box you in Canada. And
Wasn't Lotax one of them?
Lotax, yeah.
Yeah.
Lotax from Something Awful was maybe the most famous one. One of them was a 17-year-old kid. But according to Canadian laws, you can do that. You can box a minor, and it's fine in Canada, apparently, allegedly. So with all that, you know, Uwe Boll used to be a boxer in Germany, and so these film critics went up there, they didn't take it seriously, and they got the crap kicked out of them. And so part of this documentary is the boxing match. But like,
It's a good chunk of it, yeah.
it's a good chunk of it. Like you see, like the one person's mom, like crying and holding her bloody kid. Like there's a lot of strange.
Yeah, that 17-year-old.
There's a lot of strange things that go on.
It's weird that he went through with it, right? I mean, it's like Elon Musk called that guy a pedophile, but like he didn't box him, like he didn't go and beat him up. And Uwe Boll's like, I don't like my critics, I'm going to punch them. Like,
He followed through.
it's so bonkers. Like,
They accepted the challenge.
They did accept the challenge, but and that's I think one of the more interesting parts of that show is, I think that the low tax from Something Awful like shows up with cartoon bat wings or something. They don't take it seriously, and he said, "Nope, you had 3 months to train. You could have done it."
Yeah, didn't he win all of them?
Yeah, Uwe Boll won all the film critic things
Handily.
handily. When we were talking before the show, Tony, we mentioned there's a lot of Nazi imagery in his movies.
Yeah, he got real into Nazis. So Blood Rain was obviously Nazi. The third one, Blubberella, was Nazis.
Yeah, Blubberella's a weird one. Has anyone else seen that one? Blubberella? No. So he did a parody of Blood Rain 3, which was set in Nazi Germany, called Blubberella.
So he parodied himself.
He parodied himself, and he shot the movies, and he even shot those scenes back to back, so he wouldn't have to reuse have the actors come back another day and do it. And so it's like he filmed a funny version, I guess, and it stars I can't think of her name, but it stars an overweight actress as Blubberella, and she's eating sandwiches the whole time. And it tries to be an action movie, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it really doesn't.
There's an extended scene making fun of the movie Precious for some reason that you wouldn't expect.
It was a different time.
It was a different time. One of the actors in Blubberella, who's also in Blood Rain, is Willem, who was on RuPaul's Drag Race. So that's someone some people might know. But anyway, speaking of other sequels he did 2 sequels to In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale. And they also have long titles. And so you notice the first one had Dungeon Siege in there, which is the name of the game. You might think that might be in front of the title so people know what it's based off of. These other 2 have nothing to do with that first movie. He says, well, I'll call it In the Name of the King, but they'll just be fantasy movies.
The second one isn't based, the second one's called Two Worlds. It's not based on the games called Two Worlds.
No,
is it?
it's not based on the game The Two Worlds. Two Worlds has Dolph Lundgren, who's a judo instructor who gets transported to a medieval land and fights a dragon and fights things.
Also in the movie.
Yeah. And then the third one, In the Name of the King, The Last Job, some countries it's called The Last Mission, neither of which is a great title. Have to do with, I think Dominic Purcell plays a assassin who locks 2 girls in a box and steals their jewelry and goes back in time into middle-aged Bulgaria and has to fight his way back, and a dragon follows him out into the real world.
So don't steal jewelry, lesson learned.
Yeah. So what that has to do with a video game called Dungeon Siege that's about a farmer named Farmer who has to save his family from monsters.
From orcs.
From orcs.
Krugs or
They're called
something.
Krugs.
They're orcs. Don't worry, everybody. They're orcs.
Orcs. So yeah, everyone is worrying about them being orcs or not. And then I think the one we haven't covered yet is Alone in the Dark. Has anyone seen that with Christian Slater? A few people in the back. They've really seen a lot of Uwe Boll films.
Yeah.
And that one, what do you think about Alone in the Dark back there?
It's great.
It's great.
It's hilarious.
Hilarious, yeah.
Yes.
There's a scene where it does this big slow motion spinning around thing from the point of view of the bullet as it shoots a guy, and you think it would kill him, but it doesn't. He just gets right back up and keeps on fighting.
That one's weirdly disappeared from the internet in like the last month.
Alone in the Dark?
Yeah, I tried to find it, and it's not streaming anywhere anymore. It's really strange.
It's tricky. I think my favorite scene in that is also funny, and I don't know if it was intended to be. Tara Reid plays a like museum assistant or researcher, and they're trying to track down this this artifact. And she says, "Oh, we have to." One of the places it was last seen was Newfoundland instead of Newfoundland, and it's done totally straight. No actor relates to it. I guess it makes sense.
I think that's a crossover. I think she plays the same character in the Sharknado movies.
She might be in the Sharknado, where it's the time travel stuff.
Sharknadoverse, yeah.
Yeah. Is there like 20 of those, right? 6?
Yeah, 20.
20.
Yeah.
620. I can't do math.
Thereabouts.
And with Alone in the Dark, it's just so they'll set things up in the beginning and they don't have anything to do until the end. Like he was electrocuted as a kid, so the alien virus doesn't take him over and make him go crazy, but it causes other of his former classmates to like stop washing dishes and walk out into the street. It makes less sense if you're watching it, I think, but you just have to see it to believe it. In the director's cut of Alone in the Dark, Uwe Boll, during the shooting, didn't get along with Tara Reid, so he cut her out of the movie a lot. So, including the Newfoundland scene, including the sex scene, including most of her dialogue.
He cut out the sex scene?
He did.
Wow.
Now, he didn't do that for Blood Rain, as he mentioned, as Christina Loken getting naked in the movie.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
House of the Dead has a lot of random nudity in it too. Just like, oh hey, she's taking her top off for no reason.
Yeah, a lot of random nudity. Speaking of randomness, let's take some random questions from the audience. That was a terrible segue. Anybody have any Uwe Boll things they want to talk about? Any questions? Sure.
Just going back to, if I can say it right here, In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege Tale.
Yes, going back to Dungeon Siege.
Can we just address that the farmer who's named Farmer,
and
he makes a big deal in it about like, oh, I think that your name should just be what you are.
Yes.
So he's a farmer and apparently doesn't have a soldier background, but he just carries a sword around while he does farm work.
He carries a sword around. You're right, that's a good point. Farmer who says he should be what he is, a farmer. He carries a sword around while he does farm work. He carries around a boomerang as well that he uses in combat. And then later it's revealed he is the son of the king. So shouldn't he change his name to Prince or King or something at that point?
Those are actual names too. Like you can be named King. Like that's a thing.
You could, or
the director, yeah, or Prince.
Or Prince for that matter.
You know.
We had another question back here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think there's anything to the idea of like putting video game footage, like splicing it into scene transitions? Because I'm not saying it's a good idea. Do you think there's like some, like in some universe or in some form, in some format, there would be some way to make that work stylistically?
That's a good question. Is there some way stylistically to make video game footage in a movie work? Maybe like in opening credits or something?
Yeah. It would make more sense. The opening credits of that movie are like weird line drawings with techno music. Like it would make more sense for the opening credits. If you did something meta where they're maybe in the video game, like Jumanji.
Or they're playing the video game in the scene.
Or
Maybe you could do that.
It's acknowledged part of the universe.
Right.
Maybe.
We got a question up here.
So, do you know much about Uwe Boll's life story, as in like what brought him into filmmaking and specifically video game filmmaking?
Do I know much about Uwe Boll's life story? I know a little bit. He's written a autobiography. It's only in German. It's called "Fuck You All." So say that what you will. But it's he has been translating parts of it on his YouTube channel. So you can find that at uwebollraw.com, and he also does this political talk show on there. But he talks about, he always loved movies and kept a big notebook. I think that Raging Bull movie talks about
he
has
was
a
gonna
notebook.
Say, the documentary goes a lot into about how, as a child, he just grew up like loving movies, and that's kind of what pushed him into that direction. And he talks to his parents, and they're like, "Yeah, we always just knew he was gonna make movies because that's all he ever fucking talked about." So, yeah, I mean. If you haven't watched the documentary and you want to learn more about like kind of what got him into movies, that's a good place to start, definitely.
Right. Yeah, got a question in the back?
Yeah, so going back to when you mentioned that for a while Uwe Boll was like related to Nazi stuff.
Yes.
It should be pointed out that he also made a documentary
He
called
did, yes.
Auschwitz,
He did.
and it's completely nonsensical and has no point that it's trying to make. And
Yeah. So you're talking about, he did a documentary called Auschwitz that he filmed back-to-back with Blood Rain, the Third Reich, and Blubberella, using a lot of the same sets. And part of it is a documentary where he talks to high school German students about that they don't really understand what the Holocaust is, or they don't know much about history. And then part of it is a disturbing reenactment of people, Jewish people getting killed. So thanks for bringing the room down. Okay, we had a question right here. Yep. Oh, behind you. Oh. No. Yeah.
If you take Uwe Boll in his prime and Tommy Wiseau in his prime,
Mm.
had them fight, who do you think would win?
Okay, that's a great question. So if Uwe Boll got in a fight with Tommy Wiseau of the Room fame, who would win? I think, yeah, you know, I think Tommy Wiseau might open with like flinging his long hair in Uwe's face and blinding him. But Uwe does have the boxing chops.
He does.
I'd like to see that fight though.
I feel like Tommy Wiseau's really into like pocket sand maneuvers.
Yeah, pocket sand maneuvers. Okay, so
He's
he
gonna
might
throw that stuff in.
Don't give up. Tommy Wiseau would keep going.
Tommy Wiseau would keep going and not give up. I could see
The
that.
Holy Grail, he'd be like, it's but a flesh wound.
Yeah, be having Tommy Wiseau be losing limbs, bleeding all over Uwe Boll as they punch each other.
They're both weirdly shredded, like
Yeah, they're both in shape.
weirdly good shape.
Yep.
That's so tough.
Got a question in here from the person in red.
Why did people keep giving him video game license to work with?
Yeah,
Good question.
yeah. So why do they keep him getting licensed? I think because they knew he could get the movies made for cheaply, and even though a lot of them initially were in theaters, like Alone in the Dark, they didn't do that good in theaters, at least in the United States. But on home video, they sold like millions of copies. So I mean, despite his reputation, they did good on video, and later they all went direct to video with much lower budgets.
Yep.
And you can tell.
Yeah.
There's less of an epic scope, if I want to use that word.
Do you know about the tax shelter thing? We should probably talk about that.
It's sort of convoluted, but
Yeah.
yeah, there were some tax laws in Germany.
A loophole of some stripe.
Loophole. You can look it up online. We have some things back and forth, and if you really want details, Uwe Boll, he's good at doing audio commentaries on his movies. And he will take phone calls in German in the middle of his audio commentaries. He'll eat sandwiches. He'll take his dogs out for a walk. He'll go to get some chocolate cake in the middle of his commentaries. He doesn't stop them for anything. So if you want to learn more about him than the business end, that's a good way to do it. Any more questions? Over there. Yes.
If for any reason Uwe Boll was just given unlimited money, what video game title would you want him to make another movie of?
But we should all answer this question. I like this one.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. So just to repeat the question, if this recording didn't hear it, it was if Uwe Boll got all the money in the world, what video game movie would you like him to make? And Tony, you said Fortnite.
Fortnite, yeah.
Why?
Because it's hot right now.
It is hot right now.
He gets all
Right.
the money for that, I think. He has a lot to work with that game, and like. I think he would have a lot of free reign.
You could have explosions. You could have people dancing with the hair.
Silent comedy.
Silent comedy. Oh, I like that. An action film that's silent.
We were talking about earlier. Minecraft is
Yeah.
it's like kind of free form. There's not really something that you have to adhere to. You could do something interesting with that. Not interesting, but you could do something.
Uwe Boll interesting.
Yeah, something.
Uwe Boll interesting. Gee, what video game? You know, if we're talking about current stuff that's hot, I'd like to see him do Undertale. What craziness could he do with the story about a little kid under a subterranean world full of monsters with skeletons that make bad puns?
Sorry, can I go back?
Yes.
Binding of Isaac. The Binding of Isaac. Yeah.
Why don't you explain what Binding of Isaac is?
If people don't know, it's the story of the biblical story of Isaac, where his 6-year-old's mother is going to sacrifice him to God, so he escapes into the basement, and he's naked and only has his tears to fire at enemies to protect him. And it's also like really cute.
It's cute.
It sounds cute.
Disturbing. It's a hard sort of action game.
There's so much for him to work. There's nudity. There's poop. Like there's everything he wants in there.
It's the basic food groups, right? Okay. So we talked about these Uwe Boll video game movies. Out of these video games he did movies off of, which was your favorite?
Oh man.
Looking off that list, House of the Dead, Postal, Dungeon Siege, Far Cry.
Probably Far Cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've really done quite different things with those games over the years.
They have. Yeah. And it's like still relevant, so.
Good point.
I mean, I like Dungeon Siege back in the day.
It's like a Diablo knockoff, right?
Yeah. But yeah, Far Cry was.
Far Cry.
That was good stuff.
Is it one you liked?
It's still good.
Okay.
Yeah, Far Cry for me too, like head and shoulders above the. Like I'd watch it again. I'd totally watch Far Cry again. It's also way shorter than Dungeon Siege.
I think I would say Dungeon Siege. I like the. Oh, okay, 5 minutes. Thanks. I like that it's the fantasy genre. I like that it's a bit absurd. I like that you have really serious actors doing sort of nonsensical dialogue that does make more sense in the longer extended director's cut. I mean, you have a scene where Matthew Lillard as the evil prince is sleeping with a few prostitutes, and all of a sudden the evil possessed, what was it, the Kurian? What was the guy's name?
Orcs.
Orcs, yeah, let's just call them orcs. The orc bad guy, general guy, comes in while he's with these prostitutes and gives them an important message about Farmer. And they don't come, and it just looks, you just have to look it up on YouTube or something, but like it's a scene that that even in context doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's that weird sort of humor that I think Uwe Boll does well. And I think even though these movies, you might consider them good, you might consider them bad, at least they're different. Like I would watch one of his movies over Street Fighter Legend of Chun-Li.
Yeah, which we saw in theaters.
We did see that on my birthday in the theater, yeah. Where in the opening scene she's Chinese and the rest of the movie she's not.
Yeah.
So.
And Taboo from Black Eyed Peas plays Vega.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Taboo is Vega. M. Bison is blonde and Scottish or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a movie.
Just like the video game.
Just like the video game. Okay.
Wasn't it James Wan directed? Like, that's a real director. Oh, no, I'm thinking.
No.
Nope,
That's something else.
Never mind.
So to wrap this up, what are some video game movies, they can be Uwe Boll, they can be not, that people in the audience here have enjoyed? Because we say it's so difficult to get it right. They're in the back.
The first Mortal Kombat movie.
First Mortal Kombat, great choice. Yeah, it's nice and silly. I think if they did it now, it'd be rated R. You could get more of the blood fatality stuff. Any other video game movies that people like?
Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia. I've never seen that one. And that one
with the Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, the Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one either.
Version Jake Gyllenhaal.
And
And we talked about it before, Super Mario Brothers.
yeah, Super Mario Brothers is one bizarre movie.
Yeah,
It's not Super Mario Brothers at all, but it is kind of a cool movie in its own.
Yeah, in its own way.
Final Fantasy is at least visually interesting, even though it's terrible. Like, it looks cool.
The Spirits Within, you
Yeah,
mean? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yep, right there.
Willing to count Wreck-It Ralph?
Yeah, I could say Wreck-It Ralph. It's like video game inspired. That's a good choice. The previews for the sequel coming out this November look pretty funny. And they're in the back.
Yeah, Pixels with Adam Sandler is like a real.
Pixels with Adam Sandler. Well, that's a good of a note to end this on, Eddie. Thanks for coming to this Uwe Boll Video Game Movies channel podcast. I'm Matt.
Sean.
And Tony.
And if you want to learn more about Uwe Boll, go to uwebollraw.com. And then if you want to hear this online, go to look up Sequelcast 2 on iTunes, and we have all sorts of episodes on there. Thanks.